I'm Natalie Richardson, 27 years old, and I'm a freelance graphic designer living in Seattle, Washington. My world came crashing down on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when my older brother Marcus burst into our family's craftsman-style home in the Queen Anne neighborhood. His face twisted with entitlement and rage. "Natalie, I need 20 grand. Now," he announced, not asked, as he threw his designer messenger bag onto our mother's antique coffee table. "There's this limited edition Patek Philippe watch I've been eyeing. It's going to seal the deal on my VP promotion at Henderson Associates. Everyone who matters wears one." I looked up from my laptop where I'd been working on a logo design for a local coffee shop, completely stunned by his audacity. $20,000? For a watch? The sheer absurdity of it made my head spin. "Marcus, are you out of your mind?" I said, closing my laptop and standing up to face him. "I'm not giving you $20,000 for a watch. That's absolutely ridiculous. Do you have any idea how many people could live on that for months?" His eyes narrowed dangerously. That familiar look I'd seen countless times growing up when he didn't get his way. Before I could even process what was happening, he grabbed the glass pitcher of iced tea from the side table and hurled the entire contents directly at my face. The shock of the cold liquid hit me like a physical blow. Ice cubes bounced off my chest and clattered to the hardwood floor. Tea soaked through my favorite cream-colored sweater, the one I'd bought myself as a birthday present last year. I stood there, dripping and humiliated, gasping from the shock of it all. That's when my parents walked in from the kitchen. My mother, Patricia, and my father, Robert, both witnessed the entire scene. The tea dripping from my hair, my brother standing there with the empty pitcher, his chest heaving with anger, and me, their daughter, standing there soaked and shaking. I waited for them to say something. Anything. To defend me. To tell Marcus he'd crossed a line. To ask if I was okay. Instead, my mother crossed her arms and looked at me with that disappointed expression I knew so well. "Natalie Marie Richardson, why do you always have to make things so difficult?" she said sharply. "Your brother is on the verge of a major promotion. This could change his entire career trajectory. The least you could do is support him. Stop being so selfish." My father nodded in agreement, his jaw set in that stubborn way that told me there was no point in arguing. "Marcus has worked incredibly hard to get where he is, sweetheart. He's got a real shot at the executive level. You should be helping him succeed, not tearing him down. Family supports family." I felt like I'd been slapped. The tea dripping down my face was nothing compared to the sting of their words. They didn't care that Marcus had just physically assaulted me in their home. They didn't care that I was humiliated, that my clothes were ruined, that I was shaking with shock and anger. All they cared about was Marcus and his precious career. Marcus smirked, crossing his arms in triumph. "See, even Mom and Dad know you're being unreasonable. You're going to regret saying no to me, little sister," he said, his voice low and menacing. "I always get what I want in this family. Always." I stood there for a moment longer, tea still dripping from my chin, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then I turned and walked upstairs to my childhood bedroom, leaving wet footprints on the carpet. I could hear Marcus laughing downstairs, celebrating his victory with our parents. But Marcus made one critical mistake that day. He didn't know that my boyfriend, the man I'd been dating for 2 years but kept private from my family, was someone he answered to. Someone with real power at Henderson Associates. And I was about to use every tool at my disposal to make sure Marcus regretted ever crossing me. What happened at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel gala 3 weeks later would leave everyone stunned, especially my brother. I was about to turn his moment of triumph into his worst nightmare, and I had no regrets about it. Want to know how I orchestrated the downfall of Seattle's most arrogant corporate climber? Stay with me, because this story is just getting started. Looking back, my childhood in Seattle feels like it belonged to someone else entirely. Our house in Queen Anne was beautiful. A classic 1920s craftsman with a wraparound porch and a view of Puget Sound from the upstairs windows. My parents, Patricia and Robert Richardson, had bought it when my father's accounting firm took off in the late 90s. When I was little, maybe 5 or 6 years old, Marcus and I were actually close. He was my big brother, 7 years older, and he seemed so cool and grown up to me. I remember him teaching me how to ride a bike in Volunteer Park, running alongside me and catching me when I wobbled. We'd spend Saturday mornings watching cartoons together, sharing a giant bowl of sugary cereal that Mom pretended not to know about. Summer evenings, we'd walk down to the waterfront with Dad, eating ice cream cones and watching the ferries come in. Marcus would make up elaborate stories about where the passengers were going, creating adventures for strangers we'd never meet. Mom would pack picnics and we'd spread out blankets at Gasworks Park. The four of us playing frisbee until the sun set over the Olympics. Those memories feel almost dreamlike now, like they happened to different people. Because somewhere along the way, everything changed. I was about 8 years old when I first noticed the shift. Marcus had just started high school at Roosevelt, and suddenly he was the star of everything. Captain of the debate team, lead in the school play, honor roll every semester. My parents' world began to revolve around him completely. I'd come home from elementary school with a painting I'd worked on all week, excited to show my mom. "That's nice, sweetie," she'd say absently, barely glancing at it before turning back to Marcus's championship debate trophy. "Marcus, tell Natalie about your win today. Maybe it'll inspire her to push herself harder." My father started taking Marcus to Mariners games, just the two of them, leaving me at home. "This is important for Marcus's networking skills," Dad would explain. "He needs to learn how to interact in professional social settings. You're too young to understand, Natalie." But I wasn't too young to understand that I was being left behind. By the time I was in middle school, the pattern was firmly established. When Marcus wanted a new laptop for a school project, my parents drove him to the Apple Store that same day and bought him the latest MacBook Pro. When I asked for art supplies for a class project, Mom handed me $20 and told me to make it work with what's at Target. I started noticing other things, too. At family dinners, the conversation always centered on Marcus. His achievements, his goals, his problems. When I tried to share something about my day or my interests, Mom would smile politely and then turn back to Marcus. "So, Marcus, tell us more about this internship opportunity." Family photos were another painful reminder. Our living room walls were covered with framed pictures of Marcus. Marcus at his debate championship, Marcus receiving an award, Marcus graduating 8th grade, Marcus in his football uniform. There were maybe 3 pictures of me total, and they were all relegated to the hallway leading to the laundry room. High school was when it really started to hurt. I'd discovered a passion for graphic design and art, spending hours creating digital illustrations and learning design software. I was actually pretty good at it. My art teacher, Mrs. Chen, told me I had real talent and encouraged me to enter competitions. I won 2nd place in a statewide design competition my junior year. The prize was a $500 scholarship and recognition at a ceremony in Olympia. I was so excited to tell my parents. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said when I showed her the letter. Then immediately, "Marcus, don't forget you have that interview with the UW admissions counselor tomorrow. We need to make sure your portfolio is perfect. They didn't come to my award ceremony. Marcus had a football game the same day, and they chose to attend that instead. He didn't even play. He was 3rd string, but it was Marcus's game, so that's where they went. I took the bus to Olympia by myself, sat in the audience alone, and accepted my award with no one there to celebrate with me. Mrs. Chen gave me a hug afterward and told me my parents must be so proud. I smiled and lied, saying they'd had an emergency. The breaking point came during college application season. I'd worked incredibly hard, maintained a 3.8 GPA while building an impressive design portfolio. I got accepted to Rhode Island School of Design, one of the best art schools in the country. I was thrilled, absolutely over the moon. Marcus had just gotten accepted to the University of Washington's Business School. When I announced my acceptance to my family at dinner, my mother barely looked up from her phone. "That's nice, Natalie. Pass the salt, please." Then she turned to Marcus. "I'm so proud of you for getting into Foster. Robert, we should throw Marcus a party this weekend. Invite the Johnsons and the Lees. Everyone will want to celebrate with him." They threw Marcus a graduation party with 50 guests, catered food, and a hired photographer. For my high school graduation, they took me to Olive Garden. Just the four of us. Marcus complained about the breadsticks the entire time. I confronted my father one night during the summer before college. We were alone in his study, and I finally worked up the courage to ask the question that had been burning inside me for years. "Dad, why is everything always about Marcus? Why don't you and Mom ever seem excited about anything I do?" He looked up from his computer, seeming genuinely confused by the question. "Natalie, that's not true. We love you very much." "That's not what I asked," I pressed on, my voice shaking. "I asked why everything revolves around Marcus. His games, his awards, his future. What about mine?" Dad sighed and took off his reading glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Sweetheart, you have to understand. Marcus has real ambitions. He's going to be very successful in the corporate world. He's going to make something of himself. We're just helping him reach his potential." "And I don't have potential?" I asked, tears stinging my eyes. "It's different," he said, not meeting my gaze. "Art and design, that's a nice hobby, but it's not a real career path. Marcus is going to provide for a family someday, contribute to society in meaningful ways. We have to focus our resources where they'll make the biggest impact." I left his study that night feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. My own father didn't believe in me, didn't think my dreams were worth supporting. I was just the spare child, the afterthought, the one who didn't matter as much. I chose to stay in Seattle for college instead of going to RISD, attending the University of Washington and studying design there. It was cheaper, and I could live at home and save money. But the real reason, the one I didn't want to admit even to myself, was that I was still hoping to earn my parents' approval somehow. College was supposed to be my fresh start, but living at home meant the pattern continued. Marcus graduated and landed a marketing position at Henderson Associates, a prestigious consulting firm downtown. My parents treated it like he'd won the Nobel Prize. They framed his offer letter, actually framed it and hung it in the dining room. When I landed my first freelance design client and made $500, Mom said, "That's nice, dear. Don't spend it all in one place. Marcus, tell us about your 401k options." Marcus moved back home after college, taking over the entire basement and turning it into what he called his bachelor pad, complete with a wet bar and a big screen TV. I was still in my childhood bedroom with its twin bed and posters from high school. He'd come and go as he pleased, treating the house like a hotel. Mom would do his laundry, cook his favorite meals, clean his space. Meanwhile, I was expected to contribute to rent, do my own everything, and stay out of the way. Family dinners became torture sessions where I had to listen to Marcus brag about his achievements while my parents hung on his every word. Any attempt I made to participate in the conversation was met with polite disinterest, or worse, direct dismissal. "Natalie, the adults are talking," my mother said to me once when I tried to share some exciting news about a client project. I was 25 years old. Marcus took full advantage of his golden child status. He'd borrow money from our parents constantly, rarely paying it back. He'd use their credit cards for expensive purchases, promising to reimburse them later. He never did. They never seemed to care. When I asked to borrow $200 to replace my broken laptop that I needed for work, Dad said, "We're not a bank, Natalie. You need to learn financial responsibility." 2 weeks later, they bought Marcus a brand new BMW as a congratulations on your promotion gift. He'd been promoted to senior marketing associate. I watched all of this from the sidelines, feeling more and more invisible with each passing year. The resentment built up inside me like pressure in a volcano. But I kept quiet, kept trying, kept hoping that someday they'd see me. Marcus's arrogance grew along with his career. He started treating me like I was his assistant, asking me to pick up his dry cleaning, make reservations for his dates, even help him with presentations for work. When I refused, he'd complain to Mom and Dad, who would pressure me to help your brother out. The worst part was how he'd talk about me to his friends. I'd overhear him on phone calls. "Yeah, my sister's still doing her little art thing. No real job yet. My parents are worried she'll end up living with them forever. He'd laugh, as if my life was a joke, as if I was the family embarrassment. Meanwhile, I was actually building a successful freelance career. I had steady clients, good income, and a growing reputation in Seattle's design community. But none of that mattered to my family. If it wasn't corporate, if it wasn't what Marcus was doing, it didn't count. Looking back now, I can see how toxic it all was. How deeply unfair and damaging. But at the time, I was still trapped in that dynamic, still hoping for scraps of approval from parents who'd decided long ago that only one of their children was worth celebrating. That Tuesday afternoon when Marcus threw tea in my face wasn't just about the watch or the money. It was the culmination of 20-plus years of being treated like I didn't matter. 20 years of watching my brother get everything while I got nothing. 20 years of being invisible in my own family. But I was done being invisible. I was done being the doormat. And I was about to show all of them exactly what happens when you underestimate the person you've been overlooking all along. After I cleaned myself up that terrible Tuesday afternoon, I locked myself in my bedroom and let the tears finally fall. Not tears of sadness exactly, but tears of rage, humiliation, and years of pent-up frustration. I'd hit my breaking point and there was no going back. But as I sat there on my bed, still damp from the tea, something shifted inside me. The crying stopped. My hands stopped shaking. And a cold, clear determination settled over me like armor. Marcus thought he could humiliate me with impunity. My parents thought they could continue treating me like I was worthless. They all thought I'd just take it, like I always had. But they were wrong. Dead wrong. I pulled out my phone, staring at the screen for a long moment. I needed to call someone, but it couldn't be just anyone. I scrolled through my contacts and stopped at a name that made my heart beat faster. Ethan Calloway. Ethan and I had been dating for almost 2 years, but I'd kept our relationship intensely private. There were good reasons for that. Ethan was a senior partner at Henderson Associates, the same firm where Marcus worked. In fact, Ethan was several levels above Marcus in the company hierarchy. He oversaw the entire Western Region Marketing Division, which included Marcus's department. We'd met at a design conference at the Seattle Convention Center. I'd been presenting a workshop on brand identity, and he'd been in the audience. He approached me afterward, impressed by my work, and asked if I'd be interested in doing some consulting for his firm. That professional relationship had gradually evolved into something much more personal. Ethan didn't know about my family dynamics. He knew I had a brother who worked at his company, but he didn't know it was Marcus Richardson. I'd never told him about the favoritism, the neglect, the constant belittlement. I'd wanted to keep my personal and professional lives separate. Wanted our relationship to be about us, not about my family drama. But now, sitting on my bed with tea stains on my favorite sweater, I realized I needed to tell him everything. Not to use him or manipulate him, but because I was planning something big, and he deserved to know what was coming. I dialed his number. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, beautiful." His warm voice came through the speaker. "How's your day going?" I almost laughed at the irony of the question. "Ethan, we need to talk. Are you free tonight?" He must have heard something in my voice because his tone immediately became serious. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" "I'm fine," I said, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. "But yes, something happened. Something I should have told you about a long time ago. Can you come over? Not here. Can we meet at your place?" "I'm leaving the office right now," he said without hesitation. "I'll pick you up in 20 minutes. True to his word, Ethan's silver Tesla pulled up outside my house exactly 20 minutes later. I'd changed into dry clothes and thrown together an overnight bag because I knew I couldn't stay in this house another night. Not after what had happened. Not with what I was planning. I slipped out the side door without saying goodbye to anyone. Let them wonder where I went. Ethan took one look at my face when I got in the car and immediately pulled me into a hug. "Talk to me, Nat. What's going on?" And so I did. As he drove us through Seattle's evening traffic toward his condo in Belltown, I told him everything. The years of favoritism, the constant neglect, Marcus's entitlement and cruelty. And finally, what had happened that afternoon? He threw a pitcher of tea at you? Ethan's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. And your parents defended him? They told me I was being selfish for not giving him $20,000 for a watch, I said, staring out the window at the city lights. They've always chosen him over me, Ethan, always, but today was different. I'm done. We reached his building, a modern high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. His apartment was beautiful, minimalist but warm, with my artwork on the walls. He'd been the first person to buy one of my pieces, and he'd been collecting them ever since. We sat on his couch, and I continued my story, telling him about my childhood, about every slight and every disappointment, about how invisible I'd been made to feel. Ethan listened to everything, his jaw getting tighter and tighter. Natalie, he finally said when I'd finished, I had no idea. I mean, I knew you kept your family at arm's length, but I didn't realize the extent of it, and I definitely didn't know that Marcus Richardson was your brother. I kept it from you deliberately, I admitted. I didn't want you to see me as pathetic, I guess. The girl whose own family doesn't value her. Ethan turned to face me fully, taking both my hands in his. You are the least pathetic person I know. You're talented, smart, strong, and you've built an incredible career despite having zero support from your family. That's not pathetic, Natalie. That's remarkable. His words broke something open inside me and I started crying again. But these were different tears, not angry ones, but relieved ones. Someone finally saw me. Someone finally understood. After I'd calmed down, Ethan went to the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses of wine. Okay, he said, settling back onto the couch. What's the plan? Because I know you well enough to know you're planning something. I took a sip of wine and felt a smile curve my lips for the first time that day. There's a big gala coming up in 3 weeks. The Henderson Associates annual charity event at the Fairmont Olympic. I'm familiar with it, Ethan said dryly. I'm giving the keynote speech. Exactly. And Marcus has been bragging for weeks about how this event is going to be his big moment to shine. He's been networking, polishing his reputation, positioning himself for that VP promotion. This event is everything to him. Ethan's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Go on. What if I attended? As your date? Understanding dawned on Ethan's face. He doesn't know we're together. He has no idea. He thinks you're just some executive he sees in the hallways occasionally. He'd lose his mind if he found out his little sister, the one he treats like trash, is dating his boss's boss. Technically, I'm his boss's boss's boss, Ethan said with a slight smile. But I like where this is going. What else are you thinking? I pulled out my phone. I'm thinking I need evidence. Recordings of him being the arrogant bully that he is. Proof of how he treats me, how he talks about me. Something undeniable. Ethan was quiet for a moment, and I worried I'd crossed a line. Using his position, his company's event, to take down my brother could look bad for him too. But then he nodded slowly. I want to be clear about something. I won't use my position to unfairly sabotage anyone's career, even if they're a terrible person. If Marcus Richardson fails, it needs to be because of his own actions and choices, not because I'm manipulating things behind the scenes. I wouldn't want that anyway, I said quickly. That's why I need recordings. Real evidence of who he actually is. I don't want to destroy him unfairly. I want him to destroy himself with his own words and actions. I just want to make sure the right people hear and see it. Ethan studied me for a long moment, then leaned over and kissed my forehead. You're scary when you're angry, you know that? Good, I said. Marcus is about to learn exactly how scary I can be. We spent the rest of that evening planning. Ethan told me everything he knew about the gala, the attendees, the schedule. He couldn't actively help me undermine Marcus, but he could make sure I had access to everything I needed as his guest. There's a Q&A session after the presentations, Ethan mentioned. It's supposed to be casual, just an opportunity for our mid-level employees to ask senior leadership questions about company direction and culture. An idea sparked in my mind. What if Marcus spoke during that Q&A? Anyone can, Ethan said. It's an open forum. Perfect. Because Marcus can't help himself. If there's an opportunity to show off in front of important people, he'll take it. And when he does, he'll say something revealing. He always does when he thinks he's impressing people. Over the next few days, I moved in with Ethan completely. I didn't tell my parents I was leaving. I just packed up my essentials one afternoon while everyone was out and left a note on my bed that said, "Staying with a friend for a while." My mother called me once, 3 days later, to ask if I was coming home for dinner because she was making Marcus's favorite meal. Not to ask if I was okay, not to apologize for defending him after he assaulted me, but to see if I'd be there for Marcus's meal. "I won't be there," I said coldly and hung up. During those 3 weeks, I threw myself into my plan with laser focus. I needed recordings of Marcus being himself, truly himself, without the polished veneer he showed at work. I started by accidentally running into him at our parents' house. I'd timed it perfectly, knowing he'd be there for lunch on Tuesday. I walked in casually, acting like nothing had happened between us. "Oh, Natalie," Mom said, surprised to see me. "We weren't expecting you." "Just picking up some things I forgot," I said breezily. "Don't mind me." Marcus was in the kitchen on his phone, not even acknowledging my presence. Perfect. I'd put a voice recorder in my jacket pocket before coming, and I hit record as I walked past him. He was talking to his friend Brian, his voice cocky and loud. "Yeah, man, the gala is going to be huge for me. I've got my eye on that VP position, and I'm going to use this event to seal the deal. I'm going to make sure every executive there knows my name by the end of the night." "What about your sister?" Brian's voice came through the phone speaker. "Didn't she refuse to loan you money for that watch?" Marcus laughed, a cruel sound. "Natalie, please. She's a nobody. Still playing around with her little art projects, thinking she's going to make it as a designer. It's pathetic. Mom and Dad keep hoping she'll grow up and get a real job, but I think she's a lost cause. Honestly, she's an embarrassment to the family." I stood there frozen in the hallway, the recorder capturing every word. It hurt to hear, even though I'd heard similar things before. But this time, the hurt was fuel for my determination. He continued. "I told her to give me the money and she refused. Can you believe that? After everything our parents have done for her, and she won't help me out with a simple investment in my career. She's selfish. Always has been." I got what I needed and left quietly, my heart pounding but my resolve stronger than ever. Over the next 2 weeks, I collected more recordings. Marcus loved to talk about himself, loved to brag, and his arrogance made him careless. I recorded him at family dinners, at coffee shops where I'd accidentally run into him, even once outside his gym where I overheard him talking to a coworker. Each recording was worse than the last. He called me a leech who was still living off Mom and Dad. He told someone I had no real talent, just got lucky with a few clients. He bragged about how he'd put me in my place when I refused to give him money. But the worst recording came one evening when I went back to the house to get more of my belongings. Marcus was in the backyard on the phone again, and I stood just inside the door with my recorder running. "The thing about my sister," he was saying, "is that she doesn't understand how the real world works. She thinks making pretty pictures is a career. Meanwhile, I'm out here actually doing something important, actually making money and building a future. Mom and Dad know it too. That's why they've always invested in me and not her. They're smart enough to back the winning horse." He paused, listening to whoever was on the other end of the line, then laughed. "She's going to end up alone, broke, and bitter. And honestly, she deserves it. She's had every opportunity handed to her, and she's wasted it all. Sometimes I think the best thing she could do is just give up and find some guy to marry who can support her, because she's clearly not capable of taking care of herself." I stopped the recording, my hands shaking with rage. Not sadness anymore, just pure, cold fury. He thought I was going to end up alone and broke? He thought I wasn't capable of taking care of myself? I was going to prove him wrong in the most spectacular way possible. The night of the Henderson Associates gala arrived with perfect Seattle weather, cool and clear with stars visible above the city lights. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel was lit up beautifully, its grand entrance bustling with arriving guests in tuxedos and evening gowns. I'd spent the entire day preparing. Ethan had hired a professional stylist to help me get ready, and the result was stunning even to me. My dress was a deep emerald green silk that hugged my curves perfectly and swept to the floor. My dark hair was styled in loose waves, and my makeup was flawless but natural. I wore the silver watch Ethan had given me for our anniversary, the one Marcus had mocked so cruelly. Ethan picked me up at 6 o'clock, and his reaction when he saw me was everything. "You're absolutely breathtaking," he said, unable to take his eyes off me. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I said, adjusting his bow tie. He looked incredible in his tuxedo, every bit the successful executive he was. As we drove to the hotel, Ethan squeezed my hand. "Are you sure about this? Once we walk in there together, there's no hiding anymore. Your family, your brother, everyone will know." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "I'm done hiding. Done being ashamed of myself. Done making myself small to make them comfortable. Tonight, they all get to see who I really am." The Fairmont Olympics Grand Ballroom was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ornate ceiling, casting warm light over tables draped in ivory linens. Centerpieces of white roses and orchids adorned each table, and a string quartet played softly in one corner. The room was filled with Henderson Associates employees, clients and important business partners, all dressed in their finest. Ethan guided me into the room with his hand on the small of my back, and I could feel eyes turning toward us. Several people approached Ethan immediately to say hello, and he introduced me every time. "This is Natalie Richardson, my girlfriend. She's a brilliant graphic designer." Not once did he diminish me or downplay our relationship. He was proud to have me on his arm, and that confidence radiated outward. I stood taller, smiled brighter, felt more like myself than I had in years. And then I saw Marcus. He was across the room, drink in hand, laughing with a group of colleagues. He looked good, I had to admit, in his rented tuxedo with his hair perfectly styled. He was gesturing animatedly, clearly telling some story, the center of attention as always. Then his gaze swept across the room and landed on me. On us. On me standing beside Ethan Calloway, senior partner, one of the most powerful executives in the entire company. I watched the exact moment recognition hit him. His smile froze. His drink paused halfway to his mouth. The color drained from his face as his brain processed what he was seeing. His little sister, Natalie, the embarrassment. The nobody. Standing beside his boss's boss, looking like she belonged there. "Excuse me," Marcus said to his colleagues, not taking his eyes off me. He set down his drink and walked over, his expression cycling between shock, confusion, and dawning horror. "Natalie," he said when he reached us, his voice tight. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Marcus," I said coolly. "I'm attending the gala with my boyfriend." His eyes darted to Ethan, then back to me, then to Ethan again. "Your boyfriend," he repeated faintly. "Ethan Calloway is your boyfriend." "That's right," Ethan said pleasantly, though I could hear the steel underneath his polite tone. "We've been together for 2 years. Natalie talks about you quite a bit, Marcus, though I have to say, I'm not impressed with what I've heard." Marcus's face went from white to red. I don't understand. Natalie, you never asked. I cut him off. You never asked about my life, my work, my relationships. You were too busy talking about yourself to care about anything I was doing. People around us were starting to notice the tension, conversations quieting as heads turned our way. Marcus clearly realized we were attracting attention, and he tried to recover, pasting on a fake smile. "Well, this is great," he said, his voice strangled. "I had no idea. We should catch up later, celebrate." "I notice you're wearing a nice watch," I interrupted, looking pointedly at his wrist. My watch, the one Ethan had given me. The one Marcus had taken from my room the week after throwing tea at me, claiming he needed it more than I did because it actually looked good on a man. He'd been wearing it for 3 weeks, showing it off to people at work, accepting compliments on his excellent taste. And I'd let him, because it was all part of the plan. Marcus's hand instinctively moved to cover the watch. I bought this. That's interesting, Ethan said, his voice dangerously quiet. Because that's the watch I gave Natalie for our anniversary last year. It's custom engraved. Would you like to show everyone the inscription on the back, Marcus? The blood drained from Marcus's face again. Around us, people were definitely listening now, the crowd slowly gathering closer to watch the drama unfold. I should get back to my colleagues, Marcus mumbled, backing away. We'll talk later. Oh, we'll definitely talk later, I said sweetly. During the Q&A session, perhaps? I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. He practically fled, and I felt a thrill of satisfaction. That was just the opening move. The real show was still to come. Ethan guided me to our table, which was at the front of the room, reserved for senior partners and their guests. As we sat down, he leaned close and whispered, "You're enjoying this." "Immensely," I whispered back, squeezing his hand under the table. The dinner portion of the evening proceeded smoothly. I chatted easily with the other executives and their partners at our table, discussing art, design trends, and the Seattle business scene. Several people were impressed when they learned about my work, and I collected 3 business cards from potential clients before the main course was even served. All the while, I kept one eye on Marcus. He was seated several tables away with other mid-level employees, and I watched him grow increasingly agitated throughout dinner. He kept glancing over at our table, at me sitting beside Ethan, laughing and fitting in perfectly with the senior leadership crowd. I could practically see his mind working, realizing how badly he'd miscalculated, how much power I'd had all along that he'd been too arrogant to notice. After dinner, Ethan took the stage to deliver his keynote address. He was a natural speaker, confident and engaging, discussing the company's vision for the future and the importance of integrity in business. Several times during his speech, his eyes found mine in the crowd, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. This man believed in me, supported me, saw my worth, everything my family had never done. When Ethan finished his speech to enthusiastic applause, he announced the Q&A session. This is your opportunity to ask leadership anything you'd like about our company, our values, or our direction. The floor is open. Several hands went up immediately. Employees asked about expansion plans, company culture initiatives, work-life balance policies. Ethan answered each question thoughtfully, sometimes deferring to other executives at the head table for their input. And then, predictably, Marcus's hand shot up. Ethan nodded at him. "Yes, Marcus Richardson. Go ahead." Marcus stood, clearly trying to project confidence despite the nervousness I could see in his rigid posture. This was his moment, he thought, his chance to impress everyone and salvage the evening. "Thank you, Mr. Calloway," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "I wanted to ask about the VP position opening in the marketing division. What qualities are you looking for in candidates? And what advice would you give to those of us who aspire to executive leadership?" It was a classic brown-nosing question, the kind designed to make Marcus look ambitious and engaged, while giving him an opportunity to position himself as VP material. Under normal circumstances, it might have worked. Ethan's expression remained neutral. "That's a good question. We're looking for leaders who demonstrate integrity, respect for their colleagues, and a genuine commitment to the company's values. We value people who lift others up, not tear them down. Someone who treats everyone with dignity, regardless of their position." Marcus nodded eagerly, clearly missing the subtext. "Absolutely, sir. I completely agree. In fact, I've been working hard to build strong relationships across departments and—" "Let me ask you something, Marcus," Ethan interrupted smoothly. "You mentioned building relationships. How would you say you treat the people in your life? Your family, for instance." The room went very quiet. Marcus blinked, caught off guard. I'm sorry, sir?" "Your family," Ethan repeated. "How do you treat them? Would they say you're respectful? Supportive? Or would they say something else?" Marcus's face was turning red again. He clearly sensed a trap, but couldn't see where it was coming from. "I'd say I'm a good brother and son, sir. Very supportive of my family." "Interesting," I said, standing up from my seat at the head table. All eyes in the room swiveled to me. That's interesting, Marcus, because I'd say something very different. Marcus's eyes went wide with panic. Natalie, this isn't the time. Actually, it's the perfect time, I said calmly, walking toward the front of the room where a projector screen had been set up for Ethan's presentation. You wanted to talk about leadership qualities? Let's talk about them. Let's talk about respect, integrity, and how people treat others when they think no one important is watching. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the presentation system. My hands were steady, my voice clear. I'd practiced this moment in my head 100 times, and now that it was here, I felt no hesitation at all. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced to the room, I'm Natalie Richardson, Marcus's sister, and I have something I'd like to share with you all. Natalie, don't, Marcus said, his voice rising in panic. He started moving toward me, but Ethan stood up from his seat, his presence enough to stop Marcus in his tracks. Let her speak, Ethan said firmly. I pressed play on the first recording. Marcus's voice filled the ballroom through the sound system, crystal clear and unmistakably his. Natalie, please. She's a nobody, still playing around with her little art projects, thinking she's going to make it as a designer. It's pathetic. Mom and Dad keep hoping she'll grow up and get a real job, but I think she's a lost cause. Honestly, she's an embarrassment to the family. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I watched faces around the room react with shock and disgust. Marcus stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. But I wasn't done. I played the second recording. The thing about my sister is that she doesn't understand how the real world works. She thinks making pretty pictures is a career. Meanwhile, I'm out here actually doing something important, actually making money and building a future. More shocked murmurs. Someone near the back said, "Oh my God." I played a third recording, this one from the day he'd ransacked my room. I told her I'd wreck her if the event's not perfect. She's just a pawn in my game. This gala is mine, and she better not mess it up. The room erupted in whispers now, people turning to each other in disbelief. I could see several executives at the head table looking furious, their professional masks slipping to show genuine anger at what they were hearing. But I saved the best for last. The recording from 3 weeks ago, right after the tea incident? Yeah, man, I threw water at her face when she refused to give me the money. She was being unreasonable, and I had to put her in her place. Mom and Dad backed me up, of course. They know I'm the important one in the family. Natalie's just... she's nothing. She doesn't matter. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Marcus looked like he might actually be sick. His face had gone from red to a grayish-green color, and he was swaying slightly on his feet. I turned off the recordings and faced the crowd, my voice steady and clear. Marcus demanded I give him $20,000 for a luxury watch so he could look successful at this gala. When I refused, he threw a pitcher of iced tea in my face. In our parents' home? And my parents defended him, told me I was selfish for not supporting his big career moment. I held up my wrist, showing the silver watch I was wearing. He then stole this watch from my bedroom, the one my boyfriend gave me, and has been wearing it for 3 weeks, accepting compliments on it, pretending he bought it himself. More gasps. Marcus looked around wildly, as if searching for an escape route. For 27 years, I continued, my voice stronger now, I've been the invisible child in my family, the one who didn't matter, the one whose achievements were dismissed, whose dreams were mocked, whose very existence was treated as an afterthought. Marcus has bullied me, belittled me, and emotionally abused me our entire lives, secure in the knowledge that our parents would always take his side. I turned to look directly at Marcus. But here's what you never understood, big brother. I didn't need Mom and Dad's approval to be successful. I didn't need their financial support or their encouragement. I built a career on my own merit, with my own talent, through my own hard work. And I found people who actually value me, who see my worth, who treat me with the respect you never did. I gestured to Ethan. The man you've been trying so desperately to impress for the past 6 months? He's been sleeping beside me every night for 2 years. The promotion you've been scheming for? You report to his division. The watch you stole to look important? He gave it to me because he loves me and wanted to celebrate my success. Marcus sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. Ethan stood and walked to the front of the room, standing beside me. His face was stern, his executive demeanor fully in place. Marcus Richardson, what we've just heard is completely unacceptable. Henderson Associates has zero tolerance for bullying, harassment, or the mistreatment of others. The values you've displayed in these recordings are in direct opposition to everything this company stands for. He paused, letting his words sink in. The entire ballroom was silent, everyone hanging on every word. Effective immediately, you are removed from consideration for any promotion. You will meet with HR first thing Monday morning to discuss your future with this company, if you have one. We'll be conducting a full review of your behavior and conduct in the workplace to determine if this pattern of disrespect extends to your colleagues. Marcus looked up, his eyes red. Please, Mr. Calloway, I can explain. There's nothing to explain, Ethan said coldly. We've all heard exactly who you are in your own words. You're dismissed from this event. Security will escort you out. 2 security guards materialized from the edges of the room, moving to flank Marcus. He stood shakily, looking around at the faces staring at him with disgust and contempt. His eyes found mine one last time, and I saw the realization there. I had won. Completely and utterly. As Marcus was escorted from the ballroom, the room remained silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom had erupted in applause, and people were standing, giving me a standing ovation. I felt tears spring to my eyes, but these were good tears. Healing tears. Tears of release and vindication and relief. Ethan put his arm around me and I leaned into him, letting the support of this man who truly loved me hold me up. When the applause finally died down, Ethan addressed the room once more. Let this be a lesson to all of us. Character matters. How we treat the people in our lives, especially those who can't fight back, says everything about who we truly are. We don't judge people by their titles or their ambitions. We judge them by their integrity. The evening continued after that, though it was clear that everyone was still processing what had happened. People approached me throughout the rest of the night, offering support, sharing their own stories of difficult family situations, thanking me for my courage. Several senior executives made a point of telling me they'd be reaching out about design projects for the company. But the most meaningful moment came from an older woman named Margaret, a VP in the finance division. She pulled me aside near the end of the evening, her eyes kind but serious. 20 years ago, she told me, I was in a similar situation with my own family. They treated me like I was worthless because I chose a career instead of marriage and children. I let them make me feel small for decades. I wish I'd had your courage back then to stand up for myself the way you did tonight. Thank you for showing everyone, especially the young women in this company, that we don't have to accept mistreatment from anyone, not even family. Her words meant more to me than she could possibly know. The next morning, I woke up in Ethan's bed with sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows and the sound of gulls calling over Elliott Bay. For a moment, I just lay there, processing everything that had happened, half expecting to feel regret or guilt, but I felt neither. I felt light, free, like a weight I'd been carrying my entire life had finally been lifted from my shoulders. Ethan was already up, standing by the window with a cup of coffee, looking out at the water. He turned when he heard me stirring, a soft smile on his face. Good morning, warrior, he said, coming over to sit on the edge of the bed. How are you feeling? Good, I said, and I was surprised to realize I meant it. Really good, actually. Is that weird? Not even a little bit, he assured me, handing me a mug of coffee he'd already prepared just the way I liked it. You stood up for yourself after years of abuse. You should feel good. My phone was buzzing on the nightstand, notifications lighting up the screen one after another. I picked it up cautiously, not sure what I'd find. 13 missed calls from my mother. 8 from my father. 23 text messages. Mostly from them, but also from various family members and family friends who'd apparently heard about the gala incident. I opened the messages from my mother first. Natalie Marie, what have you done? You humiliated your brother in front of his entire company. How could you be so cruel and vindictive? Call me immediately. We need to talk about your behavior. Your father and I are absolutely mortified. You've embarrassed this entire family. I scrolled through them all, my jaw tightening. Even now, even after everything, they were defending Marcus. They were angry at me for exposing him, not at him for being the person those recordings revealed. My father's messages were similar. Natalie, this is unacceptable. You need to apologize to your brother immediately. We raised you better than this. Marcus called us devastated. How could you do this to him? I showed the messages to Ethan, who read them with growing anger. They're still not getting it, he said. They're still choosing him. I know, I said quietly. And I'm done waiting for them to choose me. I typed out a single message and sent it to both my parents. Marcus physically assaulted me. He stole from me. He verbally abused me for years. And you both defended him every single time. The only thing I'm sorry about is that I didn't stand up for myself sooner. I will not be apologizing. I will not be visiting. I need space from all of you to heal from the damage you've done. Don't contact me again until you're ready to actually listen and take responsibility for your part in this. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then turned off my phone completely. Ethan pulled me into his arms, and I let myself sink into his embrace. I'm proud of you, he murmured into my hair. That took incredible courage. The following Monday, I learned through Ethan, who heard through the company grapevine, that Marcus had resigned from Henderson Associates. He'd been given the option to resign or be terminated, and he'd chosen resignation to save face. Apparently, the HR investigation had turned up several complaints from colleagues about his condescending attitude and tendency to take credit for other people's work. He'd moved back in with our parents, and according to the Seattle business community gossip, he was having trouble finding another position at his previous level. His reputation had taken a serious hit. I wish I could say I felt bad about that, but I didn't. Marcus's downfall was entirely his own doing. I'd simply made sure the right people heard who he really was. Over the next few months, my life changed dramatically. I moved in with Ethan officially, and we started building a real life together. My design business exploded after the gala, partly because of the contacts I'd made that night, but mostly because I was finally free to focus all my energy on my work, instead of wasting it trying to win my family's approval. I landed 3 major corporate clients in the first month alone. By the end of the year, I'd hired 2 junior designers to help with the workload and was being featured in Seattle design magazines as an up-and-coming talent to watch. My parents tried to contact me several times. My mother sent flowers with a card that said, "We miss you. Please come home." Not, "We're sorry." Not, "We were wrong." Just, "We miss you." As if missing me was the same as taking responsibility for how they'd treated me. My father sent an email suggesting we have a family meeting to clear the air and move past this unpleasantness. Again, no acknowledgement of what they'd done wrong, just a desire to sweep everything under the rug and return to the dysfunctional status quo. I didn't respond to either of them. 6 months after the gala, my mother showed up at Ethan's building. The doorman called up to ask if I wanted to see her, and after a moment's hesitation, I agreed. But I met her in the lobby, not in our apartment. I wasn't ready to let her into my new life. She looked older than I remembered, tired and worn. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. Then she opened her mouth. "Natalie, this has gone on long enough," she said, her tone suggesting this was all just a silly misunderstanding. "It's time to stop being dramatic and come home. Marcus has had a very difficult time finding a new job, and you've made things incredibly hard for him." The sympathy evaporated. I made things hard for him? Your little stunt at that event ruined his reputation, she continued, oblivious to my reaction. People in this city talk, And now everyone knows about that incident. He's struggling, Natalie. He needs his family's support right now, not judgment. I stared at my mother, this woman who had given birth to me, raised me, and somehow managed to never truly see me. Mom, Marcus assaulted me. He threw tea in my face and you told me I was selfish. He stole from me and you defended him. He called me worthless, pathetic, an embarrassment, and you stood by while he did it. For years. For my entire life. You're exaggerating, she said dismissively. You two have always squabbled like siblings do. It's normal. Normal? I felt my voice rising. What about me is normal to you? Did you ever ask yourself why I've been so distant? Why I stopped trying to connect with you and Dad? Why I moved out and barely visited? You've always been difficult, Mom said, and I could hear the edge of frustration in her voice now. Ever since you were little, always so sensitive, always making everything about you. Making everything about me? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mom, when was the last time you asked about my work? My life? When did you last celebrate an achievement of mine? When did you ever make anything about me? She had no answer for that. I'm not coming home, I said firmly. I'm not apologizing to Marcus. I'm not pretending this didn't happen. And until you and Dad are ready to actually acknowledge how you've treated me, to take real responsibility and make real changes, I don't want a relationship with any of you. You're really going to throw away your family over this? She asked, tears forming in her eyes now. You threw me away a long time ago, Mom, I said softly. You just didn't notice because you were too busy paying attention to Marcus. I'm not the one who broke this family. I'm just the one who finally stopped pretending it wasn't broken. I walked back to the elevator, leaving her standing in the lobby. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but also one of the most necessary. A year after the gala, my life looked completely different. I'd rebranded my design business under a new name, Radiant Design Co., and had moved into a beautiful studio space in Capitol Hill. My team had grown to 5 people, and we were working with clients up and down the West Coast, but more importantly, I'd learned to value myself, to set boundaries, to surround myself with people who actually appreciated me. Ethan and I got engaged on a trip to the San Juan Islands, with him proposing on a rocky beach at sunset, the Olympic mountains purple in the distance. I said yes without hesitation, finally understanding what it felt like to be someone's first choice. Their priority, their partner. We planned a small wedding, just close friends and people who had actually been there for us. No family drama, no people who made me feel small, no one who had ever questioned my worth. Chelsea, my best friend who had helped me plan my revenge, was my maid of honor. She'd been there through everything, celebrating every victory and supporting me through every difficult moment. You know, she said to me the night before the wedding, as we sat on Ethan's balcony drinking champagne and watching the city lights, I'm so proud of who you've become, not because of what you did to Marcus, but because you finally chose yourself. That's the real victory. She was right. Standing up to Marcus and my parents wasn't really about revenge. It was about refusing to be diminished anymore. It was about saying, I matter. My feelings matter. My experiences are valid. It was about finally believing in my own worth. Marcus sent a letter a few months before the wedding. It came to my business address somehow, written in his familiar handwriting on expensive stationery. Natalie, it began, I've been in therapy since the gala incident. My therapist has helped me see some things about myself that I didn't want to face. I'm writing to say I'm sorry. I almost stopped reading there, my defenses going up automatically, but something made me continue. I'm sorry for how I treated you. You were right about everything you said. I was arrogant, cruel, and I took out my own insecurities on you because you were an easy target. Mom and Dad gave me everything, and somehow that made me feel entitled to treat you like you didn't matter. I've realized that I'm actually incredibly insecure. All that showing off, all that bragging, all that need to tear you down. It was because deep down, I was terrified that I wasn't actually as special as Mom and Dad kept telling me I was. And watching you succeed on your own, without any support or advantages, made me feel inadequate. So I tried to make you feel inadequate instead. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to want a relationship with me. I just wanted you to know that I'm working on myself, and I'm trying to become a better person. You deserved a better brother. You deserved better from all of us. I'm genuinely happy to hear you're doing so well. Your business success, your engagement, you earned all of it. I'm sorry I ever made you doubt that. I hope someday you might be willing to talk, but I understand if that day never comes. Take care of yourself, Natalie. Marcus. I read the letter 3 times, looking for manipulation, for hidden agenda, for anything that suggested this was another game, but it seemed genuine. It seemed like maybe, just maybe, Marcus was actually starting to understand the damage he'd done. I showed the letter to Ethan. What do you think? I think he's starting the work he needs to do, Ethan said carefully. But I also think you don't owe him anything. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, nothing. That's your choice to make, and whatever you decide is valid. I thought about it for a long time. Eventually, I wrote back, Marcus, thank you for your letter and for the apology. I appreciate that you're in therapy and working on yourself. That's important work, and I'm glad you're doing it. I need you to understand that forgiveness isn't something I can give you right now. Maybe not ever. What you did caused real damage that I'm still healing from. An apology is a good first step, but it doesn't erase years of pain. I'm not interested in rebuilding a relationship at this time. I need to protect my peace and continue focusing on my own healing and growth. But I do wish you well in your journey, and I hope you genuinely become the person you're working to be. Take care, Natalie. It felt good to send that letter. Not cruel, not forgiving, just honest. Setting boundaries while still leaving space for the possibility that people can change, even if that change doesn't mean I have to let them back into my life. My parents never sent an apology, never acknowledged their role in everything that had happened. They sent a gift when I got engaged, a crystal vase with a card that said, "Congratulations on your engagement. We hope you'll reconsider having a family wedding." I donated the vase to Goodwill and didn't respond. My wedding day was perfect. Not perfect in the Instagram-worthy, everything goes according to plan way, but perfect in the way that matters. Surrounded by people who genuinely loved me, marrying a man who saw my value, celebrating a future I'd built for myself. We got married at a small vineyard in Woodinville with about 50 guests. The ceremony was intimate and personal, with vows we wrote ourselves that made half the guests cry. Ethan promised to always see me, always value me, always make me feel like I mattered. I promised to build a life with him based on mutual respect, support, and partnership. At the reception, several people gave toasts. Chelsea talked about watching me transform from someone who apologized for taking up space to someone who confidently claimed her place in the world. Ethan's mother welcomed me into their family, saying she'd never seen her son happier than when he was with me, and then Margaret, the VP from Henderson Associates who had spoken to me after the gala, stood up unexpectedly to say a few words. "I didn't ask permission to do this," she said with a wry smile. "But I wanted to say something. A year and a half ago, I watched Natalie do something incredibly brave. She stood up in front of a room full of strangers and exposed the truth about how she'd been treated. And in doing so, she gave voice to everyone who's ever felt invisible, overlooked or undervalued. Since then, I've watched her build an extraordinary business and create a life that reflects her true worth. But more than that, I've watched her inspire others. Several young women in our company have found the courage to speak up about their own situations because of Natalie's example. She's shown us all that we don't have to accept mistreatment, not from anyone. So I wanted to take this moment to say thank you, Natalie. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your strength. And thank you for showing all of us what it looks like to refuse to be diminished. The world needs more people like you. The guests erupted in applause, and I found myself crying again, overwhelmed by the recognition, by the knowledge that my pain had somehow helped others find their strength too. After the wedding, Ethan and I honeymooned in Tuscany, spending 2 weeks exploring vineyards, eating incredible food, and simply enjoying being together without the weight of my family drama hanging over us. When we returned to Seattle, we settled into our life together. I continued growing my business, eventually expanding to a team of 10 and opening a second office in Portland. Ethan was promoted to executive vice president, and we became one of Seattle's power couples, featured in business magazines and invited to industry events. But the real joy was in the quiet moments. Sunday mornings making breakfast together in our kitchen, Friday evenings curled up on the couch watching movies, the way he'd stop by my studio with coffee when I was working late, the way I'd surprise him with his favorite dinner after a particularly stressful day. We built a chosen family of friends who celebrated our wins and supported us through challenges. We traveled, we laughed, we created a home that felt safe and warm and completely ours. 2 years after the gala, I received a message through LinkedIn from someone named Jennifer Chen. She explained that she was a writer working on a book about setting boundaries with toxic family members, and she'd heard about my story through the business community grapevine. "I understand this is a sensitive subject," she wrote, "but I wondered if you'd be willing to be interviewed for the book. Your story is powerful, and I think it could help a lot of people who are struggling with similar situations." I thought about it for a while, discussing it with Ethan and Chelsea and my therapist. Yes, I'd started therapy after everything, working through the years of neglect and emotional abuse. Eventually, I agreed, but on the condition that I could review anything she wrote before publication, and that I'd be identified only by my first name. The interview process was emotional but cathartic. Jennifer asked thoughtful questions that helped me process aspects of my experience I hadn't fully examined before. Why had I waited so long to stand up for myself? What made that particular moment the breaking point? What advice would I give to others in similar situations? When the book came out a year later, I was shocked to see that my chapter was one of the longest. Jennifer had titled it, "The Invisible Child: Finding Your Voice When Your Family Can't See You." Reading it was strange, seeing my experience laid out in black and white, but also validating. The book became a surprise bestseller, and I started getting messages from readers all over the country, people thanking me for sharing my story, people telling me they'd found the courage to set boundaries with their own toxic family members because of what I'd written, people who had felt alone and invisible their whole lives and finally felt seen. One message in particular stuck with me. It was from a woman named Sarah in Ohio. "I'm 43 years old, and I've spent my entire life trying to earn my parents' approval while they fawned over my younger brother. Your story helped me realize I've been waiting for something that's never going to come. Last month, I finally set boundaries with my family and started focusing on my own life and happiness. I just wanted to say thank you for helping me see that I don't have to accept mistreatment just because it comes from family." Messages like that made everything worthwhile. The pain, the confrontation, the loss of my family of origin, it all meant something if it could help others find their own strength and voice. 5 years after the gala, Ethan and I were celebrating our 3rd wedding anniversary when my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Natalie?" It was Marcus's voice, older sounding, more tentative. "I know you said you didn't want contact, and I've respected that. But I wanted to call because Dad had a heart attack." My stomach dropped. Despite everything, despite all the hurt and distance, he was still my father. "Is he okay?" "He's stable," Marcus said. But it was serious. "He's in the hospital at Swedish. Mom is with him." "Okay," I said, my mind racing. "Thank you for telling me." There was a pause. "Natalie, I know I have no right to ask, but Mom and Dad, they've been different lately. Mom especially. I think she's been in therapy too, actually. After Dad's heart attack, she kept saying she regretted how things went with you. That she was sorry she couldn't see what was right in front of her." I closed my eyes, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. "Are they asking to see me?" "They haven't said so explicitly," Marcus admitted. "But I think they want to. I think they're just afraid you'll say no, and they know they don't have the right to expect anything from you after how they treated you." I looked at Ethan, who was watching me with concern. "I need to think about it," I told Marcus. "I'll let you know." After I hung up, Ethan came over and wrapped his arms around me. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to go, to see him, to make sure he's okay. But another part of me is terrified of walking back into that dynamic, of letting them hurt me again. You don't have to decide right now, Ethan said gently. And whatever you decide, I'm with you. If you want to go, I'll go with you. If you don't want to go, that's okay too. You don't owe them anything, Nat. Not even now. I thought about it for 2 days, working through it in therapy, talking it over with Chelsea, examining my own feelings and motivations. Eventually, I decided to go, but on my terms. I texted Marcus. I'll come to the hospital tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll give them 30 minutes. If they use that time to defend themselves or make excuses, I'm leaving. I'm only coming because I want to make sure Dad is okay, not because I'm ready to reconcile. The next day, Ethan and I drove to Swedish Medical Center in First Hill. He waited in the lobby while I went up to the cardiac unit, my heart pounding with anxiety. My mother was sitting in the waiting area outside my father's room. She looked up when she saw me, and her eyes immediately filled with tears. She stood, taking a step toward me, then stopped, as if unsure whether she was allowed to approach. "Natalie," she said, her voice breaking. "Thank you for coming." I nodded but didn't move closer. "How is he?" "He's stable. The doctor says he'll recover, but he needs to make some lifestyle changes. Less stress, better diet, more exercise." She twisted her hands together nervously. "Can we talk? Before you see him?" I glanced at the clock on the wall. "You have 30 minutes. Use them wisely." We sat down in the waiting area, maintaining a careful distance between us. My mother looked older, more fragile than I remembered. The 5 years had aged her. "I'm sorry," she said, and to my surprise, her voice was genuine, not defensive. "I'm sorry for how I treated you." "How we treated you. You were right about everything you said that night at the gala. We favored Marcus. We dismissed you. We made you feel invisible and worthless, and that was unforgivable." I sat very still, waiting to see if this was going where I thought it was. "I've been in therapy for about a year," she continued. "After you cut contact, I kept telling myself you were being dramatic, that you'd eventually get over it and come home. But you didn't. And I started to realize that maybe the problem wasn't you being dramatic. Maybe the problem was that we'd hurt you so badly that you couldn't bear to be around us anymore." She pulled a tissue from her purse, dabbing at her eyes. "My therapist had me do an exercise where I wrote down every memory I had of you growing up. And when I looked at what I'd written, I was horrified. Every memory was tinged with dismissal or disappointment or comparison to Marcus. I couldn't find a single pure moment where I just celebrated you for being you. I felt my own eyes burning but refused to let the tears fall. Not yet. I talked to other parents whose children had cut them off," Mom continued. "I joined a support group for estranged families, and what I learned was that most of us parents were so busy defending ourselves and making excuses that we never actually listen to what our children are trying to tell us. We never actually take responsibility." She looked directly at me now, her expression more open than I'd ever seen it. "So I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to explain why I favored Marcus or justify any of the ways I hurt you. There is no justification. I failed you as a mother. I failed to protect you, support you, or even see you. And I am deeply, profoundly sorry." I sat there for a long moment, processing her words. Part of me wanted to accept this apology immediately, to fall into her arms and let years of pain dissolve. But I'd learned to protect myself, to be cautious. "What about Dad?" I asked. "Is he sorry too, or is this just you?" "He's sorry," she said. "He's had more time to think about it lying in that hospital bed. He told me yesterday that his biggest regret in life was not knowing his daughter. Not the real you. He said he realized he'd been so focused on grooming Marcus for success that he never stopped to appreciate the success you achieved entirely on your own." "And Marcus?" I asked. "How does he fit into all this?" My mother sighed. "Marcus has been doing his own work. He's been in therapy consistently, and he's actually doing better. He took a sales job with a medical device company in Spokane, starting from the ground up again. No fancy title, no executive pretensions. He said he needed to rebuild his character before he could rebuild his career. That surprised me." The old Marcus would never have accepted such a come-down. He talks about you sometimes, Mom continued, always with regret. He told me once that losing you was worse than losing his job or his reputation because he knew it was his fault. He knew he'd destroyed the relationship himself. I glanced at the clock. 20 minutes had passed. I need to know something. If I decide to have a relationship with you and Dad again, what would be different? Because I'm not going back to the way things were. I won't tolerate being made to feel less than. I won't accept being compared to Marcus or having my achievements dismissed. I won't be the family scapegoat anymore. I understand, Mom said quickly, and I don't expect you to trust us right away. We need to earn that back if it's even possible. But if you're willing to give us a chance, I promise we'll be different. I promise to actually listen to you, to value you, to celebrate your successes. I promise to see you. I stood up. I want to see Dad now, alone. Mom nodded and led me to his room. My father was lying in the hospital bed, IVs attached to his arms, monitors beeping softly. He looked frail in a way I'd never seen before. My strong, stoic father suddenly looked vulnerable and old. His eyes opened when he heard us enter, and when he saw me, his face crumpled. "Natalie Bear," he said, using the nickname he'd had for me when I was very small, before Marcus became the center of everything. "You came." I approached the bed slowly. "Mom said you wanted to see me." "I did," he said, his voice hoarse. "I needed to see you. To tell you." He paused, struggling with emotion. "To tell you I'm sorry. For all of it. For every time I chose Marcus over you. For every time I dismissed your dreams or made you feel like you didn't matter. You deserved so much better from me." I felt tears sliding down my cheeks now. Couldn't stop them anymore. Why Dad? Why was it always him? He closed his eyes and I saw tears leak from the corners. Because he needed so much help, so much guidance, so much pushing. And you were always so capable, so independent. You figured things out on your own. I told myself you didn't need me the way he did. But I did need you, I said, my voice breaking. I needed you to be proud of me. I needed you to celebrate my wins. I needed you to defend me when Marcus was cruel. I needed my father, and you were never there. "I know," he said, opening his eyes to look at me. "I know that now, and it's my biggest regret. Lying in this bed, thinking I might die, all I could think about was how I'd wasted so much time with the wrong child, while ignoring the extraordinary daughter who was right in front of me." "Wrong child?" I repeated. He nodded weakly. "Marcus needed help because he was always struggling, always insecure despite all his bravado. You were strong. You had real talent, real drive, real character. I should have been investing in you, nurturing your gifts, celebrating your independence. Instead, I poured everything into trying to prop up Marcus's fragile ego. I pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. I built a successful business, Dad. I got married to an incredible man. I did all of it without your support or approval. I proved I didn't need you." "I know," he said. "And I'm so proud of you. Not proud like a father who helped you achieve those things, but proud like someone who watches from a distance and thinks, I wish I knew her." He reached out a shaky hand toward me. "Is there any chance you might let me know you now? Let me be the father I should have been all along." I looked at his hand, weathered and age-spotted, trembling slightly. This was the moment. The choice. I could walk away right now, maintain my boundaries, protect my peace. No one would blame me. I'd earned the right to prioritize my own well-being, or I could take a risk. Give them a chance to prove they'd changed. Open the door just a crack and see if they were capable of walking through it differently this time. I thought about the woman I'd become over the past 5 years. Strong, confident, secure in my own worth. That woman didn't need her parents' validation anymore. But maybe she was strong enough to extend a little grace. I took my father's hand. "I'm not making any promises, but I'm willing to try. We'll take it slow. You'll have to prove through your actions, not just words, that things are different. And if you slip back into old patterns, I'm gone. No second chances. Understand?" He squeezed my hand, more tears flowing. "I understand. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you for even considering it." I stayed for another 10 minutes, talking to him about my business, my marriage, my life. He listened intently, asking thoughtful questions, seeming genuinely interested in my answers. It was strange and unfamiliar, but not entirely unwelcome. When I left his room, my mother was waiting outside. "Thank you for giving us a chance," she said softly. "Don't thank me yet," I said. "This is probationary. You're starting from zero, not from where we left off. You have to earn back my trust, and that's going to take time and consistent effort." "I understand," she said. "We'll do whatever it takes." I left the hospital and found Ethan waiting for me in the lobby, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He stood when he saw me, searching my face for clues about how it had gone. "How are you feeling?" he asked, handing me a coffee. Confused, emotional, cautiously hopeful but also terrified of being hurt again. I took a sip of the coffee, letting the warmth ground me. They apologized. Like actually apologized without making excuses. Said they wanted to rebuild a relationship if I'd let them. Ethan pulled me into a hug right there in the hospital lobby. "What do you want to do?" "I said I'd try," I admitted. "But on my terms with strict boundaries. I don't know if it'll work, but I think I owe it to myself to at least see if they're capable of change." "Then I support you completely," Ethan said. "And I'll be right beside you the whole way, ready to back you up if you need to walk away again." That's what I loved most about him. He didn't try to tell me what to do or how to feel. He just supported whatever decision I made and helped me enforce whatever boundaries I set. Over the next 6 months, I maintained limited contact with my parents. We met for coffee once a month in neutral locations, never at their house where too many bad memories lingered. The conversations were stilted at first, everyone carefully navigating around triggers and old patterns. But slowly, incrementally, things began to shift. My mother asked about my work and actually listened to the answers. She looked at my portfolio, praising specific pieces and asking intelligent questions about my design process. When I told her about landing a major client, she celebrated genuinely, without immediately changing the subject to something else. My father, recovered from his heart attack and following doctor's orders about stress reduction, started calling me once a week just to chat. Not to ask for anything, not to talk about Marcus, just to hear my voice and learn about my life. He asked about Ethan, about our home, about my goals and dreams. It was strange and sometimes uncomfortable, but it was also healing in ways I hadn't expected. The real test came when my mother invited Ethan and me to Thanksgiving dinner. It would be the first time we'd all be together as a family since the gala, and Marcus would be there too, home from Spokane for the holiday. "I'll understand if you're not ready," Mom said when she extended the invitation, "but I'd really like us to try, to see if we can be a family again, a better family this time." I talked it over extensively with Ethan and my therapist. Eventually, I decided to accept, but with clear conditions. If anyone made me uncomfortable, if old patterns emerged, if I felt disrespected in any way, we were leaving immediately. Ethan promised to be my backup, ready to extract us at a moment's notice. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and crisp, with a dusting of early snow on the ground. Ethan and I drove to my parents' house in Queen Anne, my stomach churning with anxiety. We'd agreed on a hand signal. If I squeezed his hand 3 times, that meant I needed to leave. Marcus answered the door. He looked different, less polished, more genuine somehow. His hair was longer, his clothes more casual. The aggressive confidence that had always surrounded him like armor was gone, replaced by something quieter and more uncertain. "Natalie," he said, stepping back to let us in. "Thank you for coming." "Hi, Ethan." "Marcus," I replied neutrally. My parents greeted us warmly, and I could see they'd made an effort. The house was decorated beautifully for the holiday, and the table was set for 5 with no assigned seats. A small detail, but one that meant no one would be positioned as more important than anyone else. Dinner was awkward at first. Everyone was trying too hard, too careful, too aware of the minefield we were navigating. But gradually, as wine was poured and food was served, the conversation began to flow more naturally. My mother asked Ethan about his work, and actually engaged with his answers rather than using them as a springboard to talk about Marcus. My father wanted to hear about a recent project I'd completed for a nonprofit, asking detailed questions that showed he'd been paying attention when I'd mentioned it weeks earlier. And Marcus. Marcus was different, quieter, more thoughtful. He asked me questions about my business and listened to the answers without trying to one-up me or diminish my achievements. Halfway through the meal, he set down his fork and cleared his throat. "I want to say something if that's okay." The table went silent. I tensed, ready for whatever might come. "Natalie, I know I've apologized before in writing, but I want to say it in person, in front of Mom and Dad and Ethan. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how I treated you our entire lives. I'm sorry for being cruel, entitled, and abusive. I'm sorry for taking advantage of Mom and Dad's favoritism instead of standing up for you. I'm sorry for making you feel worthless when you were actually the strong one all along." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "Living in Spokane, starting over at the bottom, it's been humbling. I work with people who don't care about my fancy education or who my parents are. They only care about whether I do good work and treat people with respect. And I've realized that you were doing that all along, building something real based on actual merit, not privilege or favoritism." I stared at him, trying to detect any hint of manipulation or performance. But he seemed sincere, his eyes red-rimmed, his hands shaking slightly. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he continued. "I don't expect us to be close siblings or for things to magically be okay between us. But I wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what you've accomplished, who you've become, and I'm genuinely in awe of you. You're the person I should have been learning from all these years, not competing against." The table was completely silent. My mother had tears streaming down her face. My father was staring at his plate, his jaw working with emotion. I took a deep breath. "Thank you for saying that, Marcus. It means something that you can acknowledge what happened and take responsibility." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I'm not ready to say we're okay. I'm not ready to have a close relationship. But I appreciate that you're doing the work to change. That matters." He nodded, seeming to accept that. "That's more than fair. I'm just glad you're here at all." The rest of the dinner passed more easily. We talked about neutral topics, movies, books, local news. My parents asked about our holiday plans, and when I mentioned we were hosting Christmas for Ethan's family, they didn't guilt-trip me or complain that I wasn't spending it with them. They just said it sounded lovely and asked me to take pictures. When we left that evening, my mother hugged me at the door. "Thank you for giving us this chance," she whispered. "We won't waste it." In the car, Ethan took my hand. "How are you feeling?" "Exhausted," I admitted. "But okay, I think. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Different." "You didn't give me the signal once," he observed. "I know. I didn't need to." I squeezed his hand. The good kind of squeeze this time. Maybe there's hope after all. Rebuilding a relationship with my family was not a straight line. There were setbacks and difficult moments. There were times when old patterns would emerge. My mother would start to compare me to Marcus, or my father would dismiss something I'd accomplished, and I'd have to firmly remind them that I wouldn't tolerate that behavior anymore. Each time, they'd catch themselves, apologize, and correct course. It was clear they were trying, genuinely trying, even when they stumbled. Marcus and I maintained a cordial but distant relationship. We'd see each other at family gatherings, exchange pleasant small talk, but we weren't close. Maybe we never would be, and I'd made peace with that. Not every relationship can be saved, and sometimes the healthiest thing is to accept a friendly distance. But with my parents, something was shifting. Slowly, carefully, we were building something new. Not the relationship we'd had before, which had been toxic and damaging, but something different. Something based on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's lives. My mother started coming to my studio occasionally, bringing coffee and asking to see what I was working on. She'd talk about her therapy sessions sometimes, sharing insights she'd gained about her own upbringing and how it had shaped her parenting. She didn't use it as an excuse, just context, helping me understand where she'd learned the patterns that had hurt me. My father took me to lunch once a month, just the two of us. We'd talk about everything and nothing: politics, art, business, life. He'd ask my advice sometimes on financial matters or business decisions, genuinely valuing my opinion. It felt strange at first, being treated as an equal by my father, but gradually I grew to appreciate these lunches. 2 years after that Thanksgiving dinner, my mother called me with unusual excitement in her voice. "Natalie, I have something to show you. Can you come over this weekend?" When I arrived at their house, she led me upstairs to a room that had once been a guest bedroom. She opened the door and I gasped. The walls were covered with my artwork. Not just recent pieces, but artwork from throughout my life. Elementary school drawings they'd apparently saved, high school paintings, college design projects, professional work. Each piece was beautifully framed and carefully arranged. In the center of one wall was the award certificate from that statewide competition I'd won in high school, the one they hadn't attended. "I created this gallery for you," Mom said softly. I went through boxes in the attic and found all these pieces I'd tucked away. I realized I'd been saving them, even when I wasn't properly celebrating them. And I wanted to correct that. I wanted to create a space that honors your talent and your journey. I walked around the room, tears streaming down my face, looking at my life's work displayed with love and care. There was even a small plaque under the award certificate that said, "We're sorry we weren't there. We're so proud of you." "Mom." I couldn't find words. She came over and took my hand. "I know I can't undo the past. I can't go back and be the mother you deserved at those moments. But I can honor them now. I can show you now that I see you. I've always seen you. I was just too foolish to show it." We stood there together in that gallery, and for the first time in my adult life, I let myself lean into my mother's embrace without reservation or guardedness. It didn't erase years of pain, but it was a step toward healing, a significant step. 3 years after the gala that changed everything, I found myself standing on a stage at a design conference in Portland. I'd been invited to give a keynote address about building a successful creative business, and the auditorium was packed with aspiring designers, entrepreneurs, and business professionals. As I looked out at the crowd, I spotted familiar faces: Chelsea in the third row, beaming with pride; Ethan in the front, his support steady as always; and to my surprise, in the back row, I saw my parents, and even Marcus, who'd driven down from Spokane for the event. My mother gave me a little wave. My father nodded encouragingly. Marcus just smiled, and for once, it looked genuine. I began my speech. 5 years ago, I was sitting in my childhood bedroom, soaked with iced tea that my brother had thrown in my face, wondering if I would ever matter to anyone. I'd spent my entire life being invisible to the people who were supposed to love me most. And in that moment, I made a decision. I decided that if my family couldn't see my worth, I'd find people who could. More importantly, I'd learn to see it myself. I went on to talk about building my business, setting boundaries, finding my voice, and refusing to accept mistreatment even from family. I talked about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who celebrate you, not tolerate you. I talked about the difference between being loved and being valued. Standing up for yourself is scary, I told the audience, especially when it means standing up to family. There's this cultural narrative that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, that we should forgive and forget and keep the peace at all costs. But that narrative often protects abusers and silences victims. It tells us to set ourselves on fire to keep others warm. I paused, making eye contact with people throughout the room. I'm here to tell you that you don't owe anyone access to you. Not if they hurt you. Not if they diminish you. Not if they make you feel small. You have the right to protect your peace, your mental health, your sense of self-worth, even if that means distancing yourself from family. After the speech, during the Q&A session, a young woman raised her hand. What would you say to someone who's afraid to stand up to their family because they don't want to be alone? I thought about the question carefully. I'd say that being alone is better than being in toxic relationships that destroy your sense of self. But I'd also say that you probably won't be alone. When you start valuing yourself, you attract people who value you too. You build a chosen family of friends, mentors, partners who actually see you and celebrate you. And sometimes, if you're lucky and if they're willing to do the work, your biological family might change too. But that's a bonus, not a requirement for your happiness. After the conference ended, my family approached me in the lobby. For a moment, it felt surreal. All of us together, interacting without tension or underlying resentment. "That was incredible, sweetheart," my father said, and I could see pride shining in his eyes. Real pride, not the obligatory kind. "You're a remarkable speaker and an even more remarkable person. I'm glad we got to see this," my mother added. "To see you in your element, being celebrated for who you are. Thank you for inviting us." "Actually, I didn't invite you," I said, but I was smiling. "How did you know about this?" "Chelsea told us," Marcus admitted. "She thought we should be here." And she was right. I looked over at Chelsea, who was chatting with Ethan nearby. She caught my eye and winked. I made a mental note to thank her later for taking that risk. "I'm glad you came," I said, and realized I meant it. "It means a lot." We went to dinner together afterward, all 6 of us, my parents, Marcus, Chelsea, Ethan, and me. The conversation flowed easily, with lots of laughter and genuine interest in each other's lives. My mother asked Chelsea about her new job. My father wanted to know Marcus's thoughts on Spokane's tech scene. Marcus asked Ethan about an article he'd written for a business journal, and they asked me about everything: upcoming projects, my expansion plans, my thoughts on design trends. They listened to my answers. They engaged with my ideas. They valued my expertise. It wasn't perfect. We weren't a picture-perfect family with no history of pain or dysfunction. But we were rebuilding. We were trying. And that was something. 6 months after the Portland conference, Ethan surprised me with an announcement over breakfast one Saturday morning. "I've been thinking about something," he said, setting down his coffee mug. "What if we started a foundation?" "A foundation?" I repeated, intrigued. "To help young creatives who don't have family support," he explained. "Scholarships, mentorship programs, business development resources. I've watched you succeed despite having no backing from your family, and I keep thinking about how many talented people never get that chance because they don't have the resources or the support system." I felt tears spring to my eyes. This man, this incredible man who saw me and understood me and wanted to help others like me. "There's more," he continued. "I want to name it after you. The Natalie Richardson Foundation for Creative Independence. What do you think?" "I think that's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever suggested," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Let's do it." We spent the next year building the foundation from the ground up. We secured funding from investors and corporate sponsors. We developed programs for high school students, college students, and early career creatives who were trying to build businesses without family financial support. My parents became involved too, donating significantly to the foundation and even volunteering for some of the mentorship programs. My mother, it turned out, was excellent at helping young artists navigate the business side of creative work. "I wish I'd done this for you," she told me once as we were preparing for a scholarship ceremony. "Supported your art, helped you build your business, actually been there for you. Since I can't go back and fix that, I want to do it for others, to honor what you deserved." The foundation's first year was a huge success. We awarded 10 scholarships, launched a mentorship program that paired 50 emerging creatives with established professionals, and hosted workshops on business development, marketing, and financial planning for artists. At the first annual gala for the foundation, I gave a speech about why this work mattered. I talked about being the invisible child, about building success alone, about the importance of seeing and valuing young people's talents even when they don't fit traditional molds. "Every person has inherent worth," I said to the crowd of donors and supporters. "Every person deserves to be seen, valued, and supported in pursuing their dreams." The young people we're helping through this foundation aren't charity cases. They're incredibly talented individuals who just need someone to believe in them and invest in their potential. Tonight we're saying, "We see you. We value you. We believe in you." The audience stood and applauded. In the front row, my mother was crying. My father had his arm around her shoulders. Beside them, Marcus stood clapping with genuine enthusiasm. And beside me on stage, Ethan took my hand and squeezed it 3 times. Not the distress signal we'd used years ago, but a new signal. I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm here with you. I squeezed back 3 times. I love you too. It's been 7 years since the gala where I exposed my brother and stood up for myself. 7 years since I walked away from my family and started building a life on my own terms. 7 years of growth, healing, and transformation. My design business, Radiant Design Co., now has offices in Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco with a team of 25 talented designers. We've worked with everyone from small nonprofits to Fortune 500 companies, and I'm regularly featured in design publications as a thought leader in the industry. The Natalie Richardson Foundation has grown beyond our wildest dreams. We've awarded over 200 scholarships, helped launch 150 creative businesses, and created a network of support for young creatives across the Pacific Northwest. Some of our scholarship recipients have gone on to incredible success, and they often come back to mentor the next generation. My relationship with my parents is solid now, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine appreciation. We have dinner together once a month, and they're actively involved in my life in healthy ways. They ask before giving advice. They celebrate my wins without caveat. They've learned to see me as I am, not as they wish I were. Marcus and I will never be close, but we've reached a place of peaceful coexistence. He's actually doing well in Spokane, married now with a baby on the way. He sends me updates occasionally, and I'm happy for him from a distance. Sometimes healing doesn't mean restoration. Sometimes it means acceptance of what is, and moving forward anyway. Ethan and I are stronger than ever. He was promoted to CEO of Henderson Associates last year, and he's transformed the company culture to emphasize respect, integrity, and work-life balance. We're talking about starting a family soon, and I know with absolute certainty that our children will never feel invisible or less than. They'll be raised by parents who value them for exactly who they are. Last week, I received a letter from a young woman named Emma, who had received one of our foundation's scholarships 3 years ago. She wrote, "Dear Ms. Richardson, I wanted to let you know that I just signed my first major client as a freelance designer. None of this would have been possible without the scholarship and mentorship I received from your foundation. But more than the financial support or the business training, what changed my life was your story. I come from a family that never understood my creative ambitions. They wanted me to be a doctor or lawyer, something practical. They made me feel like my art was a waste of time, like I was disappointing them by pursuing design. Reading about your experience helped me understand that I wasn't crazy or ungrateful for feeling hurt by their dismissal. It gave me permission to pursue my dreams anyway, even without their blessing. I still don't have a great relationship with my family, but I'm building an amazing life for myself, and I'm surrounding myself with people who celebrate me, not tolerate me. Thank you for showing me that was possible. Thank you for using your pain to help others. Thank you for refusing to stay invisible." With gratitude and admiration, Emma, I cried when I read that letter, because that's what it was all for. The pain, the confrontation, the difficult journey, it all led to being able to help others find their voice and their worth. Sometimes I think back to that Tuesday afternoon 7 years ago, standing in my childhood home with tea dripping from my face, feeling more alone and invisible than ever. I think about the woman I was then, hurt, angry, desperate for validation from people who couldn't or wouldn't give it. And I think about the woman I am now, confident, successful, surrounded by people who genuinely value me, helping others who are where I once was. If I could go back and talk to that version of myself, I'd tell her, "Hold on. It gets better. You're going to stand up for yourself in a way that terrifies you, and it's going to change everything. You're going to lose your family as you knew them, but you're going to gain yourself. And eventually, if they do the work, you might even gain them back in a healthier way. You're going to build something beautiful from all this pain. You're going to help people. You're going to matter. Not because you earned someone's approval or finally became what they wanted, but because you learned to value yourself regardless of whether anyone else did. The road ahead is hard, but you're stronger than you know, and you're not going to be invisible anymore. If you've read this far, you've heard my whole story: the pain, the confrontation, the slow rebuilding, and the eventual healing. I want to leave you with some lessons I've learned along the way, in case you're facing a similar situation or wondering how to handle toxic family dynamics. You're not required to maintain relationships that harm you. Family doesn't get a free pass to treat you badly just because you share DNA. If someone consistently makes you feel worthless, dismisses your achievements, or emotionally abuses you, you have every right to distance yourself. Protecting your mental health is not selfish. It's necessary. Standing up for yourself is terrifying but liberating. I was scared to confront my family, scared to set boundaries, scared to walk away, but doing so was the most empowering thing I've ever done. It taught me that I had agency over my own life, that I didn't have to accept mistreatment just because it was familiar. Healing isn't linear. Some days I still struggle with the old wounds. I still occasionally catch myself seeking external validation or feeling like I need to prove my worth. But those moments come less frequently now, and I've learned to recognize them and be gentle with myself. People can change, but only if they want to. My parents changed because they genuinely wanted to rebuild our relationship and were willing to do the hard work of examining their own behavior. Marcus changed because he hit rock bottom and chose to climb back up differently. But change only happens when people take responsibility and put in consistent effort over time. You can't force it. Build your chosen family. Ethan, Chelsea, my business team, the friends I've made along the way. These people have been my real family. They're the ones who celebrated my wins, supported me through challenges, and made me feel valued. Don't underestimate the importance of choosing who you surround yourself with. Success is the best revenge, but peace is the best life. Exposing Marcus at that gala felt good in the moment, but what really mattered was building a life I was proud of. The real victory wasn't his downfall. It was my rise. Focus on your own growth and success, not on making others pay for hurting you. Forgiveness is optional. I hate the cultural pressure that says you must forgive people who've hurt you. Forgiveness is a personal choice, and it's okay if you're not there yet. It's okay if you never get there. What matters is that you heal and move forward, whether that includes forgiving those who hurt you or not. Your worth is not dependent on anyone else's recognition of it. This is the most important lesson. I spent years trying to prove my worth to people who weren't looking. But my worth was there all along, inherent and unchanging. Once I truly understood that, everything shifted. I stopped performing for approval and started living authentically. To everyone who's read my story and seen pieces of their own experience reflected in it, I see you. You're not invisible. Your pain is real, your feelings are valid, and your dreams matter. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Don't let anyone convince you that you're being dramatic or oversensitive or ungrateful. Trust your instincts. Set your boundaries. Protect your peace. Build your life. Surround yourself with people who celebrate you. And know that you are inherently valuable, worthy of love and respect, regardless of whether the people who should have seen that actually did. Your story doesn't have to end with being invisible. You can write a different ending. I did. And if I can do it, so can you. Thank you for taking the time to read my journey. I hope it helps someone out there find their voice and their worth. That's all any of us can really hope to do. Turn our pain into purpose and help others along the way.